seriously no fans, none of the media, and none of the NBA organization at all is talking about this. There was a major change that the Cavaliers made in the past offseason to their coaching staff, and I think it's time to review the coaching staff as a whole, especially last year when you saw there were final results and releasing one coach that may have not even been an issue at all, and now we have a coach that people are starting to say could be an issue based on culture and other things and play style, and it's really starting to get to my head a little bit, and no one is talking about the overall review of Kenny Atkinson, and that's what we're here to break down today, is Kenny Atkinson and how big of a major change that coaching staff was, and if it mattered at all, to be honest, especially when you look at their playoff results and you look at what Bickerstaff was able to do on his new team, the previous head coach, JB Bickerstaff, what he was able to do on his new team and what Kenny Atkinson was able to do when he took over. This is something that I think needs to be talked about more, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. As always, go ahead and hit the subscribe button because we push out everything, all things Cavs. We don't miss a single update, a single news article, anything. We push out literally all things Cavs every single day, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But here, what we are talking about is Mr. Kenny Atkinson. Just as a coach, and if you look at what he did for the Cavaliers, that is what we are here to break down. Time to start reviewing what he did because you kind of break it down. You kind of think in your head that, yes, the Cavs' result was basically the same when you look at the playoffs itself. They had the same result. And did Kenny Atkinson play a factor? Is he, not there, like, physically? Like, is he not strong enough physically or mentally, as a coach? Is he not a good enough leader? And was getting rid of Bickerstaff even a good decision to begin with? Maybe the team just needed to keep developing, and maybe that's what Kenny Atkinson did. Maybe he was able to develop certain guys better, but it's so hard to break down, and no one is talking about it, so that's what I'm here to discuss with you guys today, especially when you look at the results of the regular season alone and what Bickerstaff was able to do for 5 years, kind of how we just brought out the best of the Cavs, and he brought him out of a rebuild, really, but Atkinson, topped it off. Obviously topped it off with regular season wins, didn't top it off with playoff success, and that is what we are here to talk about today. So obviously, Kenny Atkinson did win the Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year does not, playoffs do not play a factor in a Coach of the Year at all. So it 100% just goes by regular season success, and of course this was to be expected as he came into a team that was 48 wins, second round exit, and he took them to 64 wins, and I'm going to show the previous records for the Cavaliers and what Bickerstaff was able to do for 5 years here. So if you see, Bickerstaff in his 5 seasons started on a 19-win team. Like, he came in, Tyronn Lue was done. He was no longer a Cav. Bickerstaff came in and was able to get him from 19 to 22 and then took him all the way up to 44. That was the year that they got Donovan Mitchell and acquired him. They were able to use that year. Yes, they lost in the play-in game to the Atlanta Hawks, and that was a rough game, and that was a heartbreak, and I know you guys remember that one, and if you do, that one was tough. But then he ended up taking them to 51 wins, and people thought we were on the rise. We were just going to keep getting out of this rebuild, and the Cavaliers were only going to go up, which, yes, they technically did, but then they became as soft as possible and got killed by the Knicks in 5 games. And that was a devastating loss. It reminded me a lot of this year's Pacers loss, or the Pacers loss reminded me a lot of that New York Knicks loss. And but then he took them to their first second-round appearance since LeBron James left. And then, of course, they got killed, and there was injuries there. But what it's starting to look like to me is that the excuses for the Cavaliers are just consistent. It's always blaming it on injuries and blaming it on being too soft, and that is my biggest issue with the Cavs and why we need to stop pointing attention to the Cavaliers coaching staff and trying, because in sports, the coaches is always the biggest fallback option of who to blame. They always want to just look at the coaches and be like, yo, Atkinson is not strong enough mentally, or JB Bickerstaff could not develop guys well enough. It always seems like we need to blame coaches, and that's why I'm going to show you this quote from a Cleveland article I got from Terry Pluto. This is a lot to read, so just bear with me. I thought it was a bad idea to fire Bickerstaff, Pluto said. A few times I wrote about why I'd have kept him as a coach for this most recent season. Once Bickerstaff was dismissed, I pushed for the Cavs to hire Atkinson. The reason for mentioning this is to serve as background for why I plan to deliver a strong defense for Atkinson. Like a year ago, I believe he is the right coach at the right time for the team. Cavs President Koby Altman has hired 2 terrific coaches. Bickerstaff was quickly hired by Detroit. He took over a team that was 14-68 and led them to a 44-38 record. Atkinson led the Cavs to a 64-18 record, the second best in franchise history. Bickerstaff came in second in Coach of the Year voting to Atkinson. The Coach of the Year voting is done right before the end of the regular season. That means the playoffs are not a part of the decision process for voters. The point is that the Cavs didn't have a major coaching problem before, and they don't now. And that's the major part of this, is that they didn't have a coaching problem before, and they don't now. I personally am a little iffy on it. Again, fallback option for blame is always on the coach. So that's why Bickerstaff was fired. It was like, we can't get out of this playoff slump. But now you go ahead and do it again. So now it's my time to tell you guys that I totally believe that we need to stop blaming coaches. We need to ride with Atkinson. We need to develop new players, and we need to get this team to stop being so soft. We need to look at what players are the issues, and I've talked about them before, so go watch those videos, but I'm going to continue to talk about players that need to be addressed and how the Cavs can improve from those players and how they can just continue to evolve players, because you can't just keep blaming coaches. If Atkinson did something really, really bad next season or in this offseason that is worthy of letting go, but now is not the time. And that's why I need people to start talking about Atkinson as a coach and giving him credit for the fact that his play style was borderline perfect for the Cavaliers. The fact that he used the strength of every single player, Mobley, putting him down low and developing his jump shot and letting him strengthen up down low in the post. Yes, it wasn't as improved in the playoffs as I wish, but developing, the three-point shooting and using guys as shooters that can shoot and living and dying by the three in the regular season was so good. Yes, it hurt us in the playoffs, but you really, really have to understand that what Atkinson did for the Cavs is very worthy of going a long way. And but it's starting to question me, because of course you look at the playoff success and they haven't had any under any coach since Tyronn Lue and David Blatt. But of course the biggest thing was that LeBron James was there, and that's like, it's about how this Cavs team can continue to go far without LeBron James and how we can stop mentioning LeBron's name. How can we stop using the same excuses? We're soft, we're injured. Those are the two excuses I hear every year, and it's time to get rid of that, and it's time to start giving credit to coaches and starting to put blame elsewhere, like culture issues, because that could be a big thing from Dan Gilbert, the owner, and President Koby Altman. Maybe these guys just don't bring enough, mental strength towards their players. Maybe they don't really juice their players up. Maybe Atkinson, who I find hilarious, by the way, and even Atkinson understands that it's a mental thing. He understands it. It's right up here. I'll show you this.
The mental part, that we got to get over that. I just felt like we got another jump to make with kind of our mental strength. But I love our tickets. I love our leadership. I love our maturity, all that. Those would be the two areas, if you kind of right off the bat, I think we got to get better.
So there you go. Even he acknowledges that it's all up here right now. And that's what the Cavs do. They're physically soft on a lot of ends, but for being soft, the main thing is the mental softness, and having that dog in you is a term that a lot of young ones use nowadays. Do you have that dog in you? Do you have that ice in your veins, And that's what the Cavs are struggling with right now. And that's their biggest thing to address. And it's when you review Atkinson's play style, it's so perfect. Maybe he doesn't have that dog in him. Maybe he doesn't have that physicality. Maybe he doesn't have that mental physicality enough. And maybe when that issue starts to get addressed, but you can't keep blaming the coaches, and we need to keep Atkinson for as long as possible and make the changes. We need Dan Gilbert and Koby Altman to make the changes necessary instead of focusing on our coaching staff. And that's the biggest thing for me, because you have a Coach of the Year winner. You have a team, when you look at their playoff history, you look at what they're able to do. They were taken out of a rebuild. You're out of the rebuild stage. It is win it now for this team, and you have to stop. You have to develop these players, and you have to get new guys. You have to draft well. You have to develop young guys, and you have to give them that mental physicality. And that's one thing about me, though, guys. In my personal opinion, I don't think you either have it or you don't. I think it's really, really hard to tell people to just be more aggressive. I think it's hard to. I think you either have Tyrese Halliburton as an example. I know us Cavs fans, we're not very good to talk about talking good about Tyrese Halliburton might hurt us a little bit, but the sad truth is he's so physical, and he has that that physical mindset, and that's one thing that the Cavs are just simply missing, and that's one big thing that they don't have, and that's what sucks. Is that's what led to these playoff losses every single year. Is we just can't keep getting physical, but we need to ignore these excuses. Let the coaches do their job. And Baker's staff, who literally took a team to triple amount of wins for the first time in NBA history, shows you how good of a coach he is. Now, yes, I don't think he's a championship caliber coach, and that's why firing him is okay, because we're in a championship scenario. But Atkinson has not proven himself as a championship coach either. So what are your guys' honest thoughts about coaching for the Cavaliers? This is a funny video I wanted to show you guys, the Atkinson challenging the call. I think it's hilarious, and it shows you a lot about him. He's so funny to me. But, I think there is a leadership issue between Donovan Mitchell, Dan Gilbert, and Koby Altman that the Cavaliers are lacking, and that's really what they need. But they just need to go and get guys that are more physical, and we need to understand that Now, since no one was talking about it beforehand, I can tell you personally that it is time to review that Kenny Atkinson was a phenomenal coach, and that yes, they came short in the playoffs, but we cannot put as much blame on him. I do think he got outcoached to Rick Carlisle, but it was his first season with these teams. He developed a lot of guys like Evan Mobley, who's only 23, and there's a lot of potential with him. So let's ride it out with Atkinson, and let's fix some certain player needs. And that's my personal opinion. But thank you guys for joining me on Cavs Digest. I'm Matt Palange. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Drop a comment, your honest thoughts about Kenny Atkinson's season. And if there are any issues with him that need to be addressed, or any issues elsewhere that need to be addressed, what players do you guys think are the biggest issues? And as always, thank you guys for joining me.